On a humid evening in Tamale, Ghana, the air was thick with the scent of dust and diesel. Crickets hummed in the background, but another sound lingered, whispered from the lips of a man bleeding beneath the baobab trees. Traoré. His voice cracked, barely audible over the distant rumble of an engine. By the time the first customs officer reached him, he was unconscious, hand gripping a torn leather folder marked only by coordinates and initials. The name traveled fast, cutting through the shadows like a blade. It reached government halls in Accra and set alarms ringing in Ouagadougou. It crossed oceans, rattling secure lines in Langley and whispered meeting rooms in Foggy Bottom. Ibrahim Traoré had been invoked, and for many that name carried the weight of reckoning. Before we dive deeper into this intense international thriller, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one. In Ouagadougou, Traoré sat in silence, poring over reports too disturbing to dismiss. He had seen this pattern before, small shipments of rare minerals disappearing, border guards silenced, weapons suddenly appearing in rebel zones far from any official route. But now the evidence was too direct. A young Ghanaian customs officer had intercepted something he shouldn't have, and now he was dead. Traoré moved quickly, silently. He told no one beyond a tight inner circle. His entry into Ghana would not be announced, not even to the country's highest officials. Diplomacy would be too slow, too political. This was not a state visit. It was an intervention. He left the capital dressed plainly, without insignias, just a satchel and a face that knew both revolution and resurrection. At his side was Captain Samira Ouedraogo, one of the sharpest minds in his intelligence division. Together they crossed into Ghana under the cover of a development mission, but their true aim was buried in a list of names, coordinates, and coded cargo descriptions. The borderlands between Ghana and Burkina Faso were vast and unguarded, stretching out into scrubland and forest, where tribal paths outlived colonial maps. Here, entire lives existed without state oversight, and commerce, both legal and criminal, thrived in ambiguity. According to satellite logs, the area had recently seen increased aerial activity, small unmarked drones flying low at night, always near the same points. These points coincided with mineral deposits, illegal excavation zones, and suspicious deaths. U.S. signals intelligence picked it up too, but chalked it off as cartel behavior. Traoré wasn't so quick to dismiss it. When word came that a truck loaded with disguised military equipment was stopped by a rookie officer, only for him to be found dead the next day, Traoré's suspicion crystallized. Someone was moving arms through Ghana. But why? And more urgently, who had the reach to do it unnoticed? He met with local informants in Tamale, blending in among traders and travelers. The whispers painted a chilling picture. Not local gangs, not simple corruption. This was something deeper. A name came up again and again, an American ghost with ties to old operations, someone who knew the terrain, the politics, and the right hands to pay off. Traoré didn't trust coincidences, and he knew this wasn't just about Ghana. It was a corridor possibly connected to networks destabilizing the entire Sahel. He had come to disrupt it before the roots dug too deep. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sound of a lone motorbike echoed in the distance. Captain Samira approached, her face grim. She handed him a photograph, grainy but unmistakable, an airstrip, unmarked, active. Traoré stood. The hunt had begun. The road to Bolgatanga was narrow, choked with traders, herders, and rusted trucks that defied gravity with every bump. Traoré rode in the back of a weathered Land Cruiser, the windows rolled down to catch the scent of the land, red earth, millet smoke, and something else. Tension. It was everywhere, clinging to the air like fog. He wasn't here for politics. He was here for truth. Captain Samira Ouedraogo sat beside him, fingers skimming through notes scrawled in hurried French. They had recovered fragments from the leather folder found near the dead customs officer. Burned shipping manifests, coordinates leading to rural warehouses, and encrypted text messages between English and French numbers. Nothing definitive, but enough to begin a trail. Their first stop was a police post on the outskirts of Tamale. The officer in charge, young and alert, had his hands tied. "Everything goes above my pay grade," he whispered. But when pressed, he gave them names: truck drivers paid in American dollars, local chiefs suddenly flush with cash, and a known fixer seen entering one of the warehouses on their list. Traoré and Samira followed the smoke to Damongo, a town nestled near the edge of the Mole Forest Reserve. It was here, under a moonless sky, that they launched their first raid. The warehouse was quiet, surrounded by farmland and protected by a fence meant more for show than defense. Inside, the scent of oil and metal was overwhelming. Rows of crates, unmarked, sealed with military-grade fasteners. When they cracked the first open, what they found confirmed their worst fears: rifle components, encrypted satellite phones, and a folder marked in English: Red Zone, Approved Transit. Before they could secure the building, headlights pierced the night. A convoy of pickup trucks barreled toward them. Gunfire erupted. Traoré and his team returned fire with precision. It lasted minutes but felt longer. When the dust settled, 5 men were dead, and 2 were captured alive. One, badly wounded, looked Traoré in the eye and muttered a phrase that made Samira freeze: "The American ghost runs the corridor." Back at their temporary base, they interrogated the prisoner. He spoke little but enough. The shipments had been ongoing for over a year. Some crates came by drone, others through the north disguised as mining equipment. Payments were digital, funneled through shell companies registered in Delaware and Lagos. Traoré began to understand the architecture. Someone was orchestrating a transnational network with precision. It was not just smuggling, it was coordinated logistics, laundering, and covert deliveries. And Ghana's border agents? Many were unaware. The few who resisted were eliminated or silenced. Samira's voice cracked as she read the latest intercepts. "They're shipping through schools, Ibrahim. Empty ones, closed under the pretense of reconstruction. They've even modified school buses." It wasn't just criminal, it was grotesque. They now faced a moral wall. Traoré respected Ghana, valued its sovereignty, but some officials were clearly compromised. If he exposed everything publicly, he risked collapsing a neighbor's fragile balance. But if he did nothing, the weapons would flow, rebels would rise, and civilians would bleed. He looked at the map spread across the table. There were still leads to follow, an airstrip noted in multiple reports, a name whispered by the smugglers: Jake Donovan, a shadow from old American files. Traoré recognized the name. The choice was clear: quiet dismantling. No headlines, no speeches, just action. In silence, he circled the airstrip's coordinates. They would move at dawn. By dawn, the airstrip was nothing more than a sliver of concrete hidden among savanna grass. It had no markings, no control tower, only a pair of hangars and satellite dishes camouflaged against the earth. Traoré and Samira approached from the east, keeping low. Drones hovered above for surveillance, their feeds patched through a scrambled Burkinabe frequency. Inside one of the hangars, they found evidence too precise to ignore. Fuel drums marked for aerial use, spare drone rotors, and a shipment invoice traced to a non-existent mining company based in Accra. The operation was surgical. Someone was moving equipment in and out with perfect timing, always avoiding Ghana's official radar systems. Samira sifted through a crushed hard drive left behind. Her fingers moved fast. Embedded in a corrupted cache was a list of known sites, waypoints used to land and drop untraceable cargo, not just in Ghana, but in Togo, Côte d'Ivoire, and Niger. It was more than a corridor now. It was a full-fledged aerial network. Traoré leaned against the wall, processing. This wasn't just rogue smuggling. It was state-level logistics run privately. The fingerprints were familiar. Strategic placement, disguised communication, donor NGO names used as fronts. It smelled of Cold War tactics reborn for modern commerce. The deeper they looked, the more patterns emerged. Samira found coded references to a handler known only by the alias Carthage, but cross-referenced logs confirmed what Traoré already suspected. Carthage was a pseudonym. The man behind it was Jake Donovan, ex-CIA discharged for illegal operations in Libya, then vanished. Rumors placed him as a mercenary for hire, and now he was back, running logistics from shadows, untouched by borders or treaties. The name triggered more than memory. In 2017, Donovan had been quietly linked to a failed coup in a West African nation, never officially confirmed. Traoré had read the classified debrief. He remembered the style, precise, layered, deniable. This operation was his signature. They needed confirmation. In Accra, a contact arranged a discreet meeting with a mid-level US diplomat. It was risky but necessary. The man arrived late, nervous, his shirt damp from the heat and fear. "President Traoré," he said, voice low, "you're not supposed to be here." "I go where the threat lives," Traoré replied. "Is Donovan sanctioned?" The diplomat looked away. Not anymore. He was tolerated. Years ago. Then he went freelance. "We've tried to sever ties, but these people build their own systems." "Your silence is complicity," Samira cut in. The man didn't argue. He simply passed a folder across the table. "You didn't get this from me." Inside was a flight log with false destinations, call signs registered to dummy corporations, and purchase orders for weapons-grade electronics rerouted through private jets. Everything pointed to a central node. Someone was paying Donovan to maintain instability in border regions, disrupting mineral flows, and redirecting them through American intermediaries. Traoré felt the weight of it. This was no longer just about Ghana. This was about sovereignty, about a continent's right to defend its own resources from invisible leashes. They left Accra that night. Time was running short. Samira made her move first. She posed as a cultural attaché and infiltrated a private arms dealer, gathering near Kumasi. She carried a listening device stitched into her scarf, her eyes scanning for Donovan's inner circle. Inside, conversations flowed freely, too freely. Over cocktails and laughter, war was traded like stock. Meanwhile, Traoré prepared the next step. He fed a false shipment manifest into the corridor's known channels, minerals marked as confiscated relics, destination Mali. The bait was set. All they had to do now was wait. But deep down, Traoré knew, when ghosts were cornered, they bled chaos. The night over the Volta River was thick with tension. Clouds coiled low over the jungle canopy, lightning flickering in the distance, casting brief silhouettes over the narrow trail that led to the rendezvous point. Traoré stood still, earpiece humming with coded transmissions. The bait shipment had moved. Donovan had taken it. Moments earlier, a hidden relay on a rerouted school bus had pinged. Cargo marked cultural artifacts was diverted to a secondary location near the water. A perfect trap. Traoré's team closed in quietly, each member trained to move without a sound, without hesitation. They had only one rule: capture, not kill. Donovan's mercenaries were already on site, their trucks idling under camouflage nets. Armed, tense, and unaware, they were walking into the jaws of their own paranoia. When the signal was given, it came not with shouts, but with coordinated bursts of movement. Smoke grenades hissed from the tree line. The jungle came alive with motion. Gunfire snapped through the air like dry wood breaking. Traoré's men advanced low, surgical. Samira moved through the chaos like a phantom, despite the wound from Kumasi still stitched in her side. She dropped to one knee, lining up cover fire for an officer retrieving a device from one of the cargo crates, a signal jammer. Essential to isolate the site before Donovan could call in reinforcements. A mercenary lunged at her. She fired once. He dropped. Her side bled, but she kept moving. Inside the largest truck, they found Donovan, leaning over a satellite phone, his eyes calm despite the mayhem outside. He looked up as Traoré entered, sweat tracing lines down his temple. "Well," Donovan said, voice like gravel, "you move faster than Langley expected." "This isn't about Langley," Traoré answered. "This is about Africa, our minerals, our people." Donovan chuckled. "So you really think you've won something here? Shut this down today, another one pops up tomorrow. I'm just a node in the system, President." "You're a parasite," Traoré said, stepping closer. "And parasites don't survive without a host. Today, we remove you." Outside, the operation reached its final stage. Drones hovered overhead, recording every crate, every weapon. The Ghanaian Special Forces, alerted 2 hours earlier under direct orders from an internal reformist unit, arrived in silence, surrounding the area with armored precision. No one escaped. Donovan was handcuffed, his smirk fading only slightly. He watched as his trucks were dismantled, his men zip-tied and logged. He knew what this meant. Prison, yes, but more painfully, irrelevance. His web was cut. Traoré stood in silence as the cargo was counted. Drones, sniper rifles, encrypted laptops. Enough to arm a battalion, enough to destabilize 3 regions in a month, and all disguised as education aid, humanitarian supplies, or cultural exchange programs. Samira leaned against a crate, breathing heavily. "It's done," she whispered. Traoré didn't respond at first. He looked out toward the river. The rain began, slow and steady. He let it soak into his skin. This wasn't victory, it was containment, and it was temporary. But for now, one ghost had been captured. One corridor had been closed. Back in the clearing, Donovan was loaded into a helicopter under armed guard. He turned once, locking eyes with Traoré. No words. Just a look that promised the world would keep turning, and not always in their favor. But Traoré had something stronger than threats. He had truth, and with it, he intended to make noise no mercenary could silence. The jungle swallowed the last echoes of gunfire. The streets of Ouagadougou were quiet in the early morning haze, the city still wrapped in shadows, as the presidential convoy moved discreetly toward the African Union compound. No cameras, no press. This meeting was private, urgent, and loaded with consequence. Inside, Traoré faced a room of leaders, not with anger but with conviction. He laid out the evidence: logbooks, satellite data, digital transfers, intercepted calls. He named names. Not just Donovan's, but the shell corporations, the compromised officials, the quiet enablers who had allowed a mercenary empire to bloom along the borders of sovereign nations. For minutes no one spoke, then murmurs, then resolve. Traoré did not demand sanctions. He did not call for war. He asked for unity, stronger regional intelligence networks, real-time cross-border oversight, the kind of solidarity colonial systems had worked hard to prevent. He asked not just for reaction, but evolution. "Every corridor left unguarded is an invitation," he said, "not just to smugglers, but to those who believe Africa is still for sale. That era ends with us." The words struck deep. Some nodded, others remained still. But the ripple had begun. Back at the intelligence headquarters, Samira rested, stitches fresh but healing. Her actions in Kumasi and Damongo were being reviewed for commendation, but she didn't care. She had seen how close they had come to disaster, how fragile sovereignty truly was when challenged not by open invasion, but by quiet subversion. She scrolled through her tablet, news outlets cautiously reporting an international arrest with minimal details. No photos, no hero headlines, just silence where there should be outrage. But that too was part of the mission. Dismantle without spectacle, win without applause. Traoré reviewed the final brief. Donovan had been extradited quietly to a neutral holding facility pending a sealed tribunal. His network had crumbled, assets frozen across 4 continents. A few loyalists had tried to revive the smuggling routes, but failed. The new oversight systems, installed in cooperation with Ghana, were already flagging movements that had slipped through for years. But there were new threats, new names surfacing on fresh reports. This would never end, not completely. Not while greed found allies in silence. But for now, the corridor was closed and the airstrips silent. As the sun rose over Ouagadougou, Traoré stood on the balcony looking out over the city. Children walked to school. Vendors opened their stalls. For a brief moment, life moved untouched by the ghosts he had chased through the jungle. He turned to Samira. "We buy time," he said. "That's what peace really is. Borrowed time to build something stronger." She smiled, tired but firm. "Then let's keep buying," Traoré nodded. Not every battle needed medals. Some needed memory of how close they had come to losing control, not to armies but to shadows. He walked back inside, mind already turning to the next phase. New protocols, new training units, a coalition of countries ready to defend without waiting for permission. Africa, finally, with its hands on its own shield. If you were moved by this powerful story of justice and courage, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more real stories that matter. And don't stop here. Click the video on screen now to uncover another explosive case where Traoré faced betrayal in the heart of West Africa. You won't believe what happened next.